1661. The French military is a corrupt group of undisciplined and untrained mercenaries, loyal only to the man with the deepest pockets. However, when King Louis XIV took full control of the French government, he knew something had to be done. Now, before Louis XIV took control of the French government in 1661, the French military consisted of few soldiers and many mercenaries, loyal to great generals and the highest bidder, not the king. However, King Louis XIV, a warmongering king, knew that if he was to have any success at all on the battlefield, that this would need to change. However, he was not the man for the job. So, he brought in Marquis de Louvois.
Marquis de Louvois was an interesting character. Born in France, he was promoted to the position of war minister, succeeding his father, and gaining the confidence of King Louis XIV. And so to speak, he started reforming the army at the young age of 24, and, he's contributing to all these certain aspects of the military. So he started to transform this feudal army, or so to speak, as some experts say, this old-style army.
Now, Louvois' first challenge was overcoming Pass Volant.
Passavois. Well, to explain Passavois, we need to take a look at how the French army was before Louvois. The French nobles would purchase regiments, sort of like plots of land or livestock. Then he would contact the French government, letting them know how many soldiers he had residing under his command. The French government would then, in return, pay him a sum of money based on the number of soldiers they had hired. This had led to commanders saying that they had hired more soldiers than they actually did, then they would pocket the money. However, this became a problem because whenever French generals were going into battle, they thought they had thousands of soldiers, when in actuality they only had a couple hundred.
Louvois took a simple route. He instituted corporal punishment to any offenders of passe volant. Commanders would have their regiments regularly checked to make sure their numbers were true. Any commander caught lying about their numbers could be jailed or executed. Also, anybody who notified the commanders of impending inspection could also be jailed. Furthermore, he created ranks within the army, such as a major, who had no field command but instead was in charge of regulating soldiers, conduct, and commissions.
Now, even though he's overcome Pass Volant, Louvois still had a full plate. The army was still untrained, undisciplined, and still not quite loyal to the king.
So what the heck it was? Louvois reorganized the ranks of the military. He instituted discipline in the French ranks. Musket training camps conscripted young men into the military. He introduced magazines into the battlefield. This boy Louvois effectively made France a bad mother.
So, in short, King Louis XIV was a driving force behind the reorganization of the French military. He did it through Marquis de Louvois, pioneer in the fields of military organization and discipline. Together, they would change the face of Europe forever. My name is Sir Benedict Winchester III, and this has been the Splendid Century on PBS. See you next week. France. On the eve of the 17th century, Louis XIV had already begun to make radical changes to France's social policies, specifically in weakening the power of the nobles, but even more specifically, the country gentlemen. My name is Sir Benedict Winchester III, and this is Splendid Century. Hello again. Now, at the end of the 17th century, there were two kinds of nobles in France. You had court nobles and you had country nobles. In Louis XIV's France, it became imperative for nobles who intended to keep their social status and wealth that they show up in court. However, this was difficult for the country gentlemen, seeing as there were no modern transportation systems such as our modern day aeroplanes or rail systems. This made it hard for country gentlemen to maintain their status. So,
they had three choices. The country gentlemen could either live on that country estates while they lose money, join the army, or try to find opportunities of money from the rich gentlemen at Versailles.
At Versailles, King Louis XIV was clever in forcing the nobles to congregate at the court, giving him more control over the aristocracy. Thus, he was able to observe who attended and who was absent. Any noble present had the chance to receive favors and positions. And of course, the French loved to party.
There's a party on Fifth Ave. If you tryna go, I can be there in like 20. I'm a honkin' and come running 'cause we gotta hit the road.
The country nobles had a disadvantage economically. Because they had fixed incomes, they were steadily losing money over time. Besançon, or 100 leases, was one of the chief causes of small state poverty. They couldn't resort to jobs associated with other classes. For example, law and just common etiquette restricted nobles from taking jobs in the trade business. Also, jobs in civil service were reserved for the bourgeoisie, while the legal world was just absolutely closed off to them.
Perhaps the larger section of the country noblesse were retired army officers, crippled with wounds and debt, who had come back to the village to discover that their return was highly resented by the peasants. The pay was quite insufficient, but soldiering had become a profession.
As you can see, King Louis XIV seriously limited the powers of the country nobility through strict social policies implemented on all nobles. They were at an economic disadvantage and began to lose power immediately, much to the pleasure of the king. My name is Sir Benedict Winchester III, and you've been watching Splendid Century on PBS.